Hi, it's Graham Mack.
And Amy Stevenson.
Welcome to the podcast. And we had a lovely chat with a nice fella the other day, didn't we?
Oh, he was fab. He was so kind and humble.
We're talking about Jimmy Osmond, the youngest of the performing Osmonds, because I don't want to say the youngest Osmond, because they've got grandkids now, I'm guessing, some of them. There will be younger Osmonds.
Yeah, well, he's got 4 kids himself.
Yeah, well, they don't mess about, those Osmonds, because there were 5 brothers. Then there was Jimmy. Does it make him the 6th?
And there was a sister.
There was Marie. There were 2 earlier brothers who were both deaf.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, so it's an amazing story. Now, you weren't around at the time of the Osmonds' peak.
I missed it all, but I've heard about it, and I am more fascinated, I reckon, because I'm now listening to the story, the history, fascinated by his upbringing. It's just really interesting.
To say they were the One Direction of their day, I don't think covers it. I think they were bigger than that.
Well, the first thing is they weren't manufactured. They were found.
Yes.
In the early days.
Yes. They ended up on TV in America as singing Barbershop. But when we first saw them in Britain in 72, they came on the TV as they were a rock band. But it was weird because songs like Crazy Horses was a full-on rock song. It's a great song. It had an environmental message as well. And then they had other schmaltzy songs like Love Me for a Reason. And then all of a sudden, this little kid, Jimmy Osmond, comes on singing this song, Long-Haired Lover from Liverpool. And I had the record. Not only that, ashamed to admit, I learned all the words.
Ah, you kept that quiet.
It used to be my party piece.
Can you sing it now?
I'll be your long-haired lover from Liverpool, and I'll do anything you say. I'll be your clown or your puppet or your April Fool if you'll be my sunshine lady from LA.
Very good. Is that because you're from Liverpool?
That's why I liked it.
Mm.
And yeah, it had the word Liverpool, and they were my football team. Mm. So it was just a big deal.
It's funny because I was speaking to my auntie and my mum about it. Mum loved Donny Osmond,
yes,
but my auntie loved Jimmy.
Oh,
and I
really?
think that's because they were the same ages. So Mum's the same age as Donny, so that was kind of like she fancied him. That was her idol, and Donny. And my auntie was the same age as Jimmy. So she had his T-shirt, she had posters of him on the wall, she just absolutely idolised him.
Who, Jimmy or Donny?
Jimmy.
Jimmy?
Mm.
What's the matter with it? Because I'm pretty sure Donny was the one that got all the girls. I mean, he was the one.
But he was, but my auntie was the same age as Jimmy.
Oh, so that was that then?
So she fancied him, and Mum, who was older, fancied Donny.
Right. It's so weird if I think back to being a kid when I put that record on that scruffy auto-change record player. That it was an Echo radiogram, and in fact, when I first got it, it was part of my Christmas present, and I put it on, and it crackled, and it went, I'll be your long-haired lover from Liverpool. And I thought, what's going on? My parents have bought the wrong record. It's the right title and it's the right song, but that's not the version I used to listen to on the radio. Something's gone wrong here. They've got me a different version. They've got me Long-Haired Lover from Liverpool by Jimmy Edwards or something, not Jimmy Osmond.
Put you the market version.
Yeah, that's what I thought, because there used to be a lot of that went on. There were these albums called Top of the Pops that used to come out in the 70s, and it had all the hits. But you put it on and they weren't quite right. And they were session musicians doing them. Oh. And they would even do things like Bohemian Rhapsody.
No way.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, what it was, I had it on 33 instead of 45.
Ah, it's too slow.
It was just going too slow.
Yeah.
If you thought that was bad, you should have seen my sister's confusion when she was listening to Crazy Horses. She got that and I got Long-Haired Lover from Liverpool. Yeah. It was a weird time. The problem with Britain at the time was novelty songs all went to number 1. Long-Haired Lover from Liverpool was a novelty song. Mm. But, the year before, Ernie the Milkman by Benny Hill had gone to number 1. And you had Clive Dunn with Grandad going to number 1. So if you came out with a novelty song, you were quids in. And the Osmonds must have been really quids in, because they had all the younger girls were going for Donny.
Mm-hmm.
The younger kids were buying the novelty song by Jimmy.
That was my auntie. She used to do that.
And then you had the band themselves, the rest of the Osmonds, for the ones that were a little bit more grown up. You know, the ones that were maybe just starting to get married and get into serious relationships.
I think nothing's really compared to the Osmonds other than the Beatles, and possibly in the 90s Take That. I mean, girls went crazy over Take That as well.
Yeah.
But since then, there hasn't been a cult following like it.
The only thing that came close, very close after, I think it was like the following year, was the Bay City Rollers came out.
Yeah.
And the Bay City Rollers are pretty much a cheesy boy band. You know, they had a hit with a song. These are the lyrics. Bye bye baby, baby, bye bye baby, baby, bye bye. Literally, that was the lyric.
That one.
Yeah, but there's only one word. Bye bye baby, baby, bye 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 baby, baby, bye bye. Anyway, so that went to #1 as well. But they were just a cheesy boy band. But compared to the Osmonds, they were like the Sex Pistols. The Bay City Rollers, because the Osmonds were so wholesome. You know, you could turn the brightness down on the TV and all you'd see is teeth. I mean, they were, because, you know, they had their Mormon faith, and it was the whole thing, and they were all brothers as a family and everything. So it was amazing to get an insight into life in the Osmonds from Jimmy.
But look at that. So you've got the Bay City Rollers, you've got the Beatles, and you've got the Osmonds. And who's still together?
Well, we say that. But there used to be 5 singing Osmonds plus Jimmy.
But
now there's only 3.
But they're still connected. They still get on.
Yeah, it does seem that way. He was a lot more open than I thought he'd be, Jimmy.
He was very honest.
He really was.
You know, there were many times he could have said no, he doesn't want to continue, he doesn't want to go into that kind of level of depth of interview. But no, I thought he was brilliant.
And often when you talk to people, you really have to push them and dig. But it wasn't like that with him. He was forthcoming.
He's great.
He told us a lot of things about an unusual life, to be that young and that famous instantly, and to have all of your family famous, all of your brothers and your sister all famous.
We can't even comprehend how that would have been. To have been born into a famous family is one thing. A lot of the celebrities these days, they have kids and they try and keep the children away from the spotlight and away from the paparazzi. No, he was thrown straight into the middle of it. He had to perform.
Yeah.
It's a bit like, the only thing I compare it to is the circus.
People
who are born into the circus, they're born into the sideshow. They have no choice but to perform from a baby. And Jimmy Osmond was completely thrown into the spotlight and into the showbiz world. And I think that's the section that I find it so fascinating, is how he's coped with that. Because now you'd get psychologists saying, that's no good for the kids, that's basically child abuse. You know, making them go through that pressure and that stress. He's gone through all of that, come out the other side, quite a wholesome person, to be honest, after speaking to him. And I just find that really interesting.
Nice guy. Jimmy Osmond. We started out by asking him, how old were you when you started performing?
I was 3, if you can believe it.
Wow.
I started on the Andy Williams show, and my first job was to sing Red Roses for a Blue Lady was the name of the song. And then I did the first show, and then we went right to Sweden, and I had to learn it in Swedish, if you can believe that. And I have never stopped since.
Now, do you think being born into a successful showbiz family put more pressure on you or less?
I don't know. You know, I think we were so lucky. We did it together, you know, as a career, and it was kind of one for all for one kind of a deal. That doesn't mean we didn't have a lot of scars along the way, but somehow through this many years of working together intensely, we still like each other, and that's kind of, I think, something to celebrate in show business, you know, because you hear about all of the families that go into it, and then they never talk to each other again, you know.
That's amazing, because on another level, I've worked in business with my family, and it's tough. There are tough times, because it's
so difficult,
there are these boundaries. You tend to cross the boundaries that you wouldn't in a professional working environment, that you think it's okay to cross when you're working with your family.
Yeah, you know, you totally take it for granted sometimes, but you know, somehow we've been able to get through it, and we're having the time of our life now. I mean, my brother Merrill and my brother Jay and I, we still do over 100 shows a year, and we just really love what we do. And every show is different, even though a lot of times you sing the same songs, you know. It's just like every different venue, it's a different experience, because it's really not about us anymore. It's about, you know, watching people remember their lives when we were lucky enough to be on the radio, you know. And I think if you keep that perspective and realize that, you know, you have a responsibility to go out there and help these people forget their troubles for a couple of hours. And I think when you do that, everybody has more fun, you know.
So you talked about scars briefly. It couldn't have been that bad, could it?
Yeah, you know, we made a lot of money. We lost a lot of money. There was a lot of things where, you know, one brother would be pushed out in front and the other brother would be told to, you know, sit back. And you know, it's somehow, you know, like Merrill, for instance, he was the lead singer for years. He sang lead on all of the Osmond hits. And then when Donny came along, he was told he can no longer sing his hit records because it wasn't right for the age group that was buying the tickets at the time. And so, I mean, just crazy stuff that would really separate a lot of families and break up a lot of groups. But, you know, 55 years later for them, they're still working together, which is pretty spectacular, I think.
That's brilliant. And how did Merrill deal with that? Because he was young at the time. So
he was, and it hurt him quite a bit. Jay was really the first one that was got all the attention, you know, on the Andy Williams show. And because he was so cute and didn't have you know, his two front teeth were gone, you know, the public fell in love with him. But then, you know, I think we've always kind of never took ourselves that serious. We were always willing to change, and, you know, we've had different hits in different genres of music and by different Osmonds. And so we kind of celebrate each other's career in a way. And I think that's pretty unique, you know.
It's great that you're that close to each other still after all those years and working together so closely.
Yeah, it's funny, you know, I have a little car because I spend a lot of time over here, and it's funny because after every show, we hop in our car and we go to services and we get, you know, Marks and Spencer's peas or whatever it is, and we just laugh and we just have a good time, you know.
Now, when the Osmonds the Osmonds first hit the UK in '72, I remember it well. It was like Beatlemania. It was
wild,
crazy.
It was scary, actually. When I came over, I thought we had done something wrong, you know, because there would be people outside screaming, and then no hotels would take us because we had several incidences where the girls, it was so intense that they broke the plate glass windows with axes, and it was just nuts unless you lived through it, you know, and the fire brigade would hose them down, and it was just crazy. And do you remember the day, and I hope this doesn't sound like I'm bragging because I'm not, I was just trying to remember the days, but do you remember when we flew into Heathrow Airport and it collapsed? Do you remember that?
Yeah, that was a big deal, wasn't it?
It was wild.
It was just crazy. And we literally hadn't seen anything since Beatlemania. It was like that all over again, only it was coming the other way across the Atlantic from this family of singing brothers at the time. And then it went on to Donny and Marie became the act. How did the brothers handle that? Because the Osmonds had been really shunted to one side, and now it was all Donny and Marie.
Well, it was actually designed that way because my older brothers were, you know, getting married, and they were, you know, trying to figure out what we were going to do for a real job. And we never stopped, though. We always still did shows, the brothers did. But they decided to consciously produce television shows. And at the time, there was a guy named Fred Silverman that gave us a shot to produce kind of a chat show with Mike Douglas. And Donny Marie went on there, and they did really well. And so the brothers became producers. And so even at that level, we were all still involved with each other's success. I mean, they'd write the music for us younger ones. And I often say there'd never be a Donny and Marie or Jimmy if it wasn't for Alan Wayne, Merrill, and Jay. And and their willingness to kind of just do what was right for the time, for the team, if you know what I mean. So we were always regulars on all the shows, but because we produced them. And so even today, we still help each other and on our own individual careers.
It's great that you still support each other. But going back to the Heathrow episode, what do you think's changed now? Because you don't get, the reaction that you guys had. You don't get that today. And I can't work out why there isn't the phenomenon, why people aren't going crazy like they used to.
I have a theory, but I don't know if it's right. But, back in those days, there were only just a few channels, and there were only a few stations, and they would, pick their favorite groups. I mean, you'd look at them, there was only a handful of us at the time that would get that much exposure, And we were this American band that came over, and it was just kind of, I think it was the time, where everybody was just excited to have like the first boy band experience, which really we were lucky enough to be in the way of that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And you mentioned being scared as well. I can't imagine how scary it must have been being you were a child at the time.
And I remember having to be put in a trunk and carried out in the crowd so people wouldn't pull your hair, and that kind of thing. And it was wild. We used to have these bodyguards. We called them Rena-thugs. They were all ex-football players, and a lot of them aren't, not around anymore. But I ran into one of the guys. We were playing the O2 a couple months back, and he came by, and we started reminiscing about all of the antics that we had to go through, hiring bread trucks to hide in, and to get to the venues, and it was wild.
And if you had your time, and because it was your parents that put you through this, I guess, and gave you this great experience, if you honestly had a choice again, would you do it again?
Oh, totally.
Yeah, even through all the scary times.
Well, what's fun now is I have 4 kids, beautiful wife, and it's really about them now for me. And it's so fun to watch them go to school and have a regular childhood experience. And I feel like I've had the best of both worlds because I would never give up the wild and crazy and unique experiences that we've had. But I also love seeing the normality of a regular childhood that I'm experiencing now through the eyes of my kids,
And they don't mind having a famous dad?
They don't mind. One time I went up to my son, Zach, who looks exactly like me, poor kid, and when I was his age. And people always would, say, hey, you look just like your daddy, and squeeze his cheeks and all that kind of stuff. And I said, are you okay with that, son? He said, I feel lucky, Dad. And I just was like, wow, that could be totally a different reaction.
Yeah, yeah. So they've seen the old tapes of you high kicking your way out onto stage singing I'll Be Your Long-Haired Lover from Liverpool?
Unfortunately, they have. But again, I'm not the kind of dad, and neither are my brothers or my sister that really kind of rubs that in any of our kids' faces, because it's like, it's not them. This is their day to shine in their own ways, and it's fun to just be their support, and to have a unique backstory like we have. It affords us some amazing opportunities to, be in plays and to have theaters and to have those experiences for them as well. But they've kind of taken advantage of, they've been on stage and they perform, but really I hope they don't follow in my footsteps.
Really? The business is that bad?
Well, it hasn't been for us. It's been fantastic. Are you kidding?
But you had a hard time. When you say you lost a lot of money, what was it? It was like $100 million, wasn't it?
Yeah, but we've all recovered since then, so it's all an old memory. But we weathered it, and we were honorable in our business dealings. It was just the typical naive situation where you entrust money with other people and they run off with it. But that's kind of a showbiz thing. I mean, you look at every family that's gone through that, we were just lucky enough to be able to weather, the ups and downs in the business and still be here to talk about it,
Because those who don't realise how big the Osmonds were, you had your own television production facility and everything. It was all being made by the Osmonds. The Osmond family was a huge business.
It was, and I've been involved with about 1,100 hours of television programming. So we've tried all aspects of it, behind the scenes, in front of the camera, and live to tell about it. But I think if you asked any Osmond what we'd prefer, it's definitely doing live shows like we do.
Yeah.
Because we've all gravitated back to that. And it's just, when we really appreciate the career we've had, and we know we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for these people that come see us, and to be able to have that much history. In our shows, we put up these big screens, and we show visuals of the very beginning of our lives, from Walt Disney discovering the brothers to Andy Williams to the crazy days that we've been talking about. And we visually take people back in time, and we literally morph, which is kind of cool. You kind of go from a young child, and we actually visually morph into who we are today, and it's kind of cool. Because not very many groups can do that,
No, absolutely not. I'm, completely fascinated with your childhood, Jimmy. And, a lot of people say, even the later days when you did lose the money, that you're not a really true successful entrepreneurial businessman until you've lost everything. And then you've learned you taught yourself how to build it again. And it sounds like you've got you would be the consultant I'd want to come to for marketing.
Well, we could just tell you what not to do.
Yeah.
But, even I have to be honest, and this is kind of a fun, weird interview. Sorry to talk about all this stuff, but
that's good.
Nice for me I feel like I've gone to therapy. But anyway, but it is interesting. I was talking to my brothers about this last night in the car, and because we've gone through all this stuff we've gone through, it's really made us better people, and I'm proud of my brothers because they could, be quite negative about some of the bad things that have happened to us, but they've taken that on board and learned lessons, and they're really nice people. And I think if we wouldn't have had those struggles, we could have been fallen into the same trap that a lot of these stars do, that, my brothers value money, they value people, and it's not about how many fancy cars you have anymore, or if you have your private jet anymore. It's just about having an interaction with each other. And they treat everyone the same, whether it's the Queen of England or if it's just a guy off the street.
But that's what's so
we
great.
Learned that from our parents, and I don't think any of us would have be like that if it wasn't for those ups and downs.
It keeps you humble. It keeps you grounded, and that's, I think, how you get longevity. You're a really nice guy, and people want to support you, and they want to work with you because you don't have the arrogance. It's not all about the money. It's about your family. That's great. Yeah. A lot of
I think if you care, I think our beliefs were part of it too. I think, when you realize that there's a loving God up above that loves each and every one of us the same, regardless of their race or religion or whatever. And I think, our mom and dad really taught us the value of an individual.
Were there times when they thought, what have we done? We've put our family through this.
We were like this family of quail running across the interstate. We were like, we had no idea what we were doing. And my mom and dad, had no experience and in show business or business in general.
What was their line of work before the Osmonds kicked off?
My dad, he tried a bunch of things, and he was successful because he just really had people skills, And he was a mailman, and he was a insurance salesman. He was a real estate guy, and really it was the real estate that stuck, for him to provide for his family. And my mother was my dad sang barbershop as a hobby.
Yeah.
That's where he taught us the different harmony parts. And my mother played saxophone in a dance band and came from a line of school teachers.
Yeah.
So she made sure, even though I never went to public school, she made sure that all of her kids had a good education, but it was kind of self-taught, you know.
So what do you think now, Jimmy, when you see some of the younger stars, and some of them a lot older than you were when you started, but they came through the system? I'm specifically talking about your Justin Bieber, your Miley Cyrus, and they you know, some of them are clearly making a few mistakes in their young lives. How does that make you feel when you see that, knowing that you came through it a different way, unscathed?
Well, I don't judge anybody, but I admire their talent, and I think they're all doing the best they can. But I was so blessed to have parents that loved each other, brothers and a sister that became my best friends, and not everybody can have that. And I admire anybody that goes through struggles and that's had that much talent and success, and wish them luck, because they'll figure it out. Eventually, life has a way of beating you down to where you become, I think, a nice person, and I think they are probably nice people. It's just they get caught up with maybe people that have maybe a agenda, and maybe not helping them make decisions. The worst thing to have around you is a bunch of yes people, you know. Real friends tell each other no and give each other boundaries.
We say that to our boss all the time. He hasn't quite got to grips with that yet.
I mean, but anyone in show business, I call it too much mirror time. If you look at yourself in the mirror, even if you're the nicest guy in the world, it changes the way you think. And anybody in show business can fall into those little pitfalls.
So you were guided by your parents, and did you have, because a lot of these, like Miley Cyrus and Justin Bieber, they have outside people that are guiding them and telling them what to do and saying it's a great idea to twerk in the middle of a million people, in front of a million people, that wouldn't necessarily be our view of the right way to go about things. So did you have that guidance as well? Do you think it's a case of they've been misguided?
Well, I think the times are different, too. But, you know, you have to know what you're going to stand for, and he has his own values, and we have ours. And I think, you know, if you don't stand for something, you fall for anything. And the truth is, you know, the way he wants to live his life is different than what we've decided how to live our lives. And you know, it's just a different time, you know. And I don't know how we would have fared if we would have had the success we had at this day and age. But back in the days when we were growing up, we always said, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. We always dressed properly. We always felt like there was a sense of responsibility when you'd have millions of fans that are teenagers that are following you and trying to emulate, do what you do. You kind of sense a sense of responsibility. And to this day, you know, I've been tempted to do crazy things.
Have you?
I've always felt like, you know, if I did that, what would that first of all do to my family? What would that do to other people that were looking up to me as hopefully a guy that stood for something? And that really helped me. You know, to me, what's really the most impressive is, you know, if you see a guy that's not popular, if you see a guy that's just an everyday Joe, and he lives a good life and treats people right, doesn't take substances he's not supposed to hurt his body and that kind of thing, to me, those are the real heroes. Because when you're just so visible and everyone's looking at you, you do have a greater sense of responsibility.
That's a massive pressure, surely. You know, I think of the pressures that we have now growing up. Nothing compared to having all those fans' responsibility on your shoulders, your parents' responsibility for them on your shoulders, making them proud, making all the people around you, you know, make money, be happy. That pressure must have been unreal.
Yeah, but again, I think it's better than having that pressure and than not having it at all and just being some free spirit and not having any desire or goals or belief or foundation. To me, I'd be a lot more frightened to get through this crazy life without what I have and what I was empowered with by my family and what we were afforded by so many wonderful people.
Well, we totally commend you for staying normal.
Who says I'm normal?
Well, as normal as can be under the circumstances, and showbiz normal anyway. Jimmy, let's talk about...
you guys are so nice. Thank you for the therapy session.
No problem at all. Just any time, just lay back on the couch and tell us all about it. We'd like you to tell us about the current show on the current tour. So who's on the tour with you?
It's Marilyn, Jay, and myself.
Yeah.
Wayne was the other part of the brothers for so many years, and he had a brain tumor, and we were doing our final tour a couple years ago, and he didn't make the tour because he couldn't. And we thought, oh, this is it, And we didn't want it to be over, so we went and honored the dates that he couldn't play with us.
Mm-hmm.
And the response was so huge that we just kept going, the three of us. And so when we're on a tour now, and we just finished the arena tour not too long ago, and now this one is called Up Close and Personal because it's fun to talk like we've been talking, and to share stories of the entertainers we worked with and the hit records that we had and the ups and the downs. And it's that very intimate kind of a show. And last night we had a blast. It was such a cool theater. It's a smaller venue, but it was just, on fire. People remembered all the hits, and we even sang some of our country hits and Barbershop from the Andy Williams days, and of course Crazy Horses.
Crazy Horses and Long Haired Love from Liverpool.
Reason and all the stuff people expect you to do.
You're at Stevenage Arts and Leisure Centre on the 28th of September.
Okay, I believe you. I've been there before.
Yeah, there's still a few tickets left. Jimmy Osmond, it's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you for being there. And I have to admit, although it wasn't the first record I bought with my own money, the first 45 I owned, because it was part of my Christmas present that year, was Long Haired Lover from Liverpool by Little Jimmy
Can I buy
Osmond.
it back?
No, I still got it. I've still got it. Yeah, it's on.
Really? Oh,
it's on the MGM label. It's a blue label. Yeah.
That's right. That Mike Curb was our executive. You remember the Mike Curb congregation? They had hits, and they were our record exec, and it was a total fluke. My mom heard the song, loved it, and she said, I want Jimmy to sing it, because I had my first hit record in Japanese when I was 5,
Right.
And so I recorded it, and it became this crazy hit. It was kind of like Happy back in the day, you know what I mean, where everyone loved it, but they played it too much, so you started to hate it,
Yeah. Well, it gave you're still in the Guinness Book of Records as the youngest artist to have a #1 hit in the UK.
Yeah, I didn't know that for years, but my daughter found that out, and I was like, no way.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
You
much.
guys are awesome.
Continued
Thanks
success.
so much for your time.
Thank
I
you.
hope to see you guys soon.
Yeah, love to.
All right, cheers.
Take care.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Jimmy. Bye. Jimmy Osmond.
What a lovely man.
Top bloke.
He's one that I'd want round my dinner table. I could pick his brains for ages because we were lucky to have that half an hour with him. But I definitely could have spent another half an hour with him.
Oh, yeah. What an amazing story. If you like this podcast, make sure you share it with your friends, Twitter, Facebook, whatever you like. If you'd like to get it automatically downloaded into your device, your phone, your iPad, whatever, you can subscribe at iTunes. Just look for Graham Mack's podcast. And there's archive podcasts as well at macmedia.co.uk. Good one coming up next week.
Oh, Tom Stade, the comedian. Can't wait to speak to him.
Now, he's Canadian, but he's done the Edinburgh...
He has been on Michael McIntyre's show.
Yes.
He's featured on there.
Live at the Apollo?
Live at the Apollo, yeah. He was, and people have told me that he is a really good talker.
Tom Stade, next podcast, Graham Mack, Amy Stevenson.